Hey, everybody, you're in for a treat. This is your host, Jim Masters, coming to you live from the East Coast of the United States in the New York area. And we are live right now with JMS, the Jim Masters Show, Entertainment Lifestyle Celebrity Talk Show series, bringing back the lost art of conversation. Thank you very much for joining us from all around the world. We appreciate all the love, the support, the viewership, and everybody who's been following along with all the episodes and celebrity friends and special guests who stop by the Jim Masters Show to celebrate what we're doing here. We welcome everybody. We see comments already coming in our JMS chat room. Boy, do we have a riveting, eye-opening, and really cool show and amazing guests who's joining us here on the program. We're talking about entertainment reporter, journalist, author, Hollywood's tabloid bad boy, William Keck is joining us. So you're probably like, well, what do you mean Hollywood's tabloid bad boy? What is that talking? What? Explain. What are you talking about? You have some splaining to do, like Desi Arnaz used to say. There's a really cool story about it that he's sharing in his new book, and we're very excited about it. When You Step Upon a Star, Cringeworthy Confessions of a Tabloid Bad Boy. What am I talking about? Well, he grew up in the East Coast, upstate New York, and he was a page for CBS and NBC. And then Hollywood came a-calling. He wanted to make his way to the West Coast to Hollywood and hopefully maybe even meet some of those stars that we all grew up with. Matter of fact, as an only child growing up in upstate New York and a child raised on television, which many, many, many were, William Keck, he adopted all the TV families, you know, the Brady Bunch and all of the ones that everybody watched. He fell in love with the characters and the music, the theme songs, the sets. Well, he did as well. And, he sort of created his own world by watching so much television. And he dreamed one day of heading out to Hollywood, California, to Tinseltown to meet some of those TV stars in person, the celebrities he saw on television and film. Well, they say, be careful for what you wish for, because he did that. He went out to Hollywood and became a writer and all, and he joined the ruthless National Enquirer as a cub reporter. And William did come in contact with a lot of those celebrities he dreamed of meeting, and the town's most rich and famous. How did he do it? By crashing their weddings, by pursuing them in high-speed chases, visiting them in their hospital beds, going through their garbage cans. I'm not making this up. You're probably going, what the? Yes, he's got the wounds and the scars to prove it, even visiting cemetery plots as well. And in his book, he's open, he's raw, he's real. He tells some extraordinary stories about how, a lot of the celebrities were not fond of him at all. They would run in the other direction when he would come. They wouldn't answer the phone. He was on a list of do not. However, a lot also turned around and became friends with them. And there's a mutual admiration now, which is quite amazing how that turned around. He'll tell us a little bit about that coming up. And now he's coming clean and confessing all, per se, in this humorous, cringeworthy confessional. He takes us along on his adrenaline pumping and often dangerous scoop gathering missions. Yes, jumping fences, hiding in trees, stealing the garbage, and tracking down a celebrity's organ donor, and landing on the Scientologist's dreaded suppressives list. Employing the tactics of an undercover spy to satisfy kind of like almost what he calls mafia bosses, those in the newspapers. The author succeeds in infiltrating in a Las Vegas escort service, Palm Springs nudist resort, a Hawaiian prison, and the private home of Nicole Brown Simpson's grieving family just days after what happened. It's an unbelievable career he's had. What's really amazing about all of this as well is he became a producer of some beloved television programs as well, and revered and admired too, which is amazing how, he turned all that around, because he's worked with Aaron Spelling, the titan of all of television, especially in the 70s and 80s, with all those incredible TV shows, Charlie's Angels and Dynasty Hotel, Family, one of the most beautiful shows, Family, of course, Seda Thompson and Christy McNichol, Gary Frank, James Broderick, Quinn Cummings, Meredith Baxter Burney. Yes, we did watch that series. But he also is a producer on Home and Family on the Hallmark channel. I know many of you watching love the Hallmark channel. Well, he was one of the key producers on the Hallmark channel. There's Christina Ferrer and Mark Steinis, the original hosts. He also producer with the Dynasty reunion. Yes, the classic series, doing the reunion as well. And also has worked with the Discovery Network and the Discovery Channel, Josh Gates Tonight, and working as a producer on that as well. And as I mentioned, he's had an opportunity to meet, there's somebody I've always wanted to meet, Dick Van Dyke. Everybody loves Dick Van Dyke. Through the many, many years, he, as a child of television, has had an opportunity to meet Robin Williams, of course, and Pam Dauber, some of the most incredible people that we all love from film and from television, Zsa Zsa Gabor and her husband. There are stories, we just picked these up to show you. There's the cast of MASH. We had Loretta Swit on our show. If you didn't see that episode, you should check it out. He's met them all. He's written about them all. Now, how apropos that we pulled this one up, Luke Perry, Jason Priestley, with the untimely passing of Shannon Doherty just a day or so ago. And of course, Dr. Ruth and Shelley Duvall and Richard Simmons, who was sort of making a comeback. God bless them all and their souls. But, our guest has had an opportunity to meet so many of these people, but he wrote about them and he talks about it again in the book. Just giving you a little teaser here. He's going to be joining us from Los Angeles. There is the book. It really is incredible. During the 3 decades working as an entertainment reporter for not only the National Enquirer, but also People Magazine, Entertainment Weekly, USA Today, and the Los Angeles Times, and as an Emmy-nominated producer for the Hallmark Channel, Discovery Channel, and NBC, he really is confessing all about his most memorable celebrity encounters, and for one reason or another, the ones that went horribly wrong as well. And for more than a shocking admission of past sins, When You Step Upon a Star chronicles the repentant author's own evolution from a lonely child obsessed with Hollywood stars to an eager tabloid snoop, keeping personal secrets of his own, to a well-respected journalist who ultimately learns from his mistakes, changes his wicked ways, and befriends the celebrities he once wronged. So that's really cool. Life sometimes becomes full circle, right? I'm not going to tell you any more because you'll want to get the book. We'll tell you how you can get the book. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Coming to us from Tinseltown, from Hollywood, from Los Angeles, the whole bit. Our very special guest is here to confess. I think I'm like a priest today, right? He's going to confess. William Keck joining us here on the Jim Masters Show Live. William, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yes, Father, I'm here to confess my sins. My goodness, that intro. I want to meet this person. Who is this person you're talking about? That sounds incredible.
He's the toast of the town, I guess, from what I've heard, right?
Wow. Well, that was very nice. Thank you very much. I was very excited to get the invitation to come on your show.
Pleasure is all mine.
You're legendary. So I think we're going to have some fun today.
And how do you like the garbage? Do you want me to ship you my garbage by UPS or FedEx so you can go through it?
It's only good.
I have very neat garbage. We wash out the bottles.
Wow. Well, that's getting a lot of play, that particular thing. The story in the book that I tell about stealing garbage was Kelsey Grammer's garbage. And we were always looking for dirt on Mr. Grammer during the Frasier heyday. So they sent me to actually go pick up his garbage on, I think it was garbage day was Wednesday where he was living. I took it back to our offices on Sunset Boulevard. I went through it, and as I was kind of putting it all in categories, I noticed, this is really a disgusting way to start, but I guess he'd thrown away some pork chops or some steak, but there were there were maggots that were crawling all throughout the Enquirer's office, which I thought was so fitting that the National Enquirer was infested with maggots. I ran down to get a vacuum.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
This was at midnight. Well, I know. I mean, it was a nightmare, but I had nightmares about this. I was sort of imagining flies, like with Kelsey Grammer's maniacal laughing face, just swarming around me. But yeah, these things actually happen. People actually do these things. But no, I only steal garbage when it's fresh out of the can and not previously gone through.
See, now if it was Christopher Knight's garbage can, of course it would have been pork chops and
applesauce.
So you grew up, you're an East Coast kid, like I am as well. You grew up, I grew up in New York too, further out east on Long Island. You grew up upstate. So your TV stations you grew up with were coming out of Albany, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
Albany.
it was ABC was 10,
10,
NBC was 6.
Yeah.
And then CBS was channel 13.
So you created sort of like your own world, right? You're an only child, so you were very fixated with what you watched on television, all those classic shows, all the series, and I grew up on television too, and that's why it's kind of cool that we work in an industry that really inspired us and drew us in. Early on as kids. The television was on, radio was big as well. What was it about these stars, these celebrities, these shows that really appealed to you to the point where you had these dreams of going out to the West Coast, to where most of them really were, where a lot of the shows were made, and try to find a way to get into the industry to meet them? What was that like growing up in upstate New York for you?
Well, when you talk about that time, my mind immediately goes back to the early 80s. I think that was the best time on television ever. In my mind, I'm thinking about Mondays was Little House on the Prairie. Tuesdays was the best. That was ABC. It was Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Three's Company, Too Close for Comfort, Heart to Heart. Wednesdays was all about Dynasty for me. Thursdays was Knots Landing until it became Cosby and Family Ties and Cheers and Night Court and LA Law. Fridays was awesome. I would stay in watching Dukes of Hazzard, Dallas, and Falcon Crest. Saturday, I would babysit, but Love Boat and Fantasy Island. It was all about that. Sundays were super cool because that was the Norman Lear, the end of his heyday with shows like All in the Family and Alice and One Day at a Time. These became my surrogate families, all these people I just mentioned. In the back of the book, I have photos with almost all of these TV families. And it became my Christmas card for many years. But yeah, like you said, I was an only child. My dad died when I was 5, and I sort of latched on to these families as my dream surrogate families, and ended up meeting a tremendous amount of them and eventually reuniting them. Super dream come true.
Now, when did the writing and the journalism part start for you? Were you writing for the school newspaper? That was sort of the route for me: school newspaper, the radio station, the TV station, sort of breaking in through school and then doing internships, going from there. How about for you?
Yeah, same thing, Jimmy. I worked for our school newspaper. I went to Hobart College in upstate New York, and our paper was called The Herald. And I had a comic strip in there that ran for a couple of years called The Squealers, which made fun of pop culture icons at the time. I also did a movie review column. But yeah, I would do these kind of weird stories on moonlighting and facts of life. And I had no access to interviewing these people, but I guess I had something to say about it. And then within, about 3 years, I was actually in Hollywood interviewing all these people.
Now, interesting thought. And I'm sure the audiences, the viewers, we welcome everybody who's watching and commenting from around the world. Feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV, and you can comment in the chat section. With the admiration that you've had for these, and still have, for the celebrities, for the people of note, for the people you saw on your television screen and in the movie theaters growing up, was it hard to then sort of become that investigative journalist where you had to do certain things to learn about the backstory, behind the scenes, pull the veil? Was there ever in the beginning part any trepidation or internal resistance because you admired these people to go in that direction? How did that work for you? Were you wrestling with that?
Oh yeah, I was so desperate to meet these people, but I was doing it like you said in the most awkward places. I was a big fan of TV superheroes, Wonder Woman, Bionic Woman, and Batman. And the Enquirer gave me a chance to do an Adam West story by flying to Hawaii and going to a prison to interview his daughter, who was in prison for trying to murder her in-laws. I got to meet Lindsay Wagner, the Bionic Woman, but not in a sit-down interview, but by crashing her father's funeral. So, it was like how cool I got to meet these people, but they were telling me to f off and calling the cops on me and chasing me out of their home. So, like you said, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly. What
Yeah.
was the very first? Was it the Adam West? What was the very first story that you covered in that regard, of where it was really finding out a little bit more about the celebrity and
Yeah.
bringing it to life?
Well, it really was about the Brady Bunch.
The Brady
Robert
Bunch.
Reed was my total surrogate dad, and I came into the Enquirer knowing nothing about how things worked. Like a lot of us, I was thinking, okay, supernatural, beloved star, scandal. So I came in my mind with what I thought could be a cool Enquirer headline, and it was I went to the Brady Bunch house. I just knocked on the front door. I met the homeowner, and I tried to convince her into doing a story with me that her house was haunted by the ghost of Robert Reed, Mr. Brady, who had died recently and apparently hated doing the Brady Bunch. So she was on board. At first, she was like, no, I'm not hearing any rattling or any spooky stuff. But I gave her my card and said there could be some money in it for you. And she's like, okay, all right, I maybe I hear some things. So I told my editors, hey, listen, I think I got a great story here, Brady House Haunted by Robert Reed. And they were furious. They said, this is not how we do things. We don't make up stories here. And if you think that's the way we do it, then you can pack up your desk right now and get out of here.
And you said, okay, I don't hear a ghost, and neither does
Well,
she.
well, yeah, I mean, I think that they were really just nervous about moles because they had somebody there recently who was a plant who was there to find out about the Enquirer secrets. So they wanted to make sure that I wasn't, the next one. But yeah, in a short amount of time, I was doing real interviews. The next Brady I actually got to meet, not a ghost, was Cindy Brady, and it was about a DUI. She got busted for driving while intoxicated and ended up in prison. And she came on the phone, and I had a great chat with her about about a couple days in the pokey. So yeah, I mean, weird circumstances interviewing these people initially.
Susan Olsen. Yeah, she's always very open and real and authentic and no holds barred, right? She'll tell you anything, and she's very relatable.
Yeah, and they asked for very little in return. I mean, she saw the article and then she saw that some quotes had been made up, not by me. I would turn in my stories, and there were three kind of mysterious guys down in Lantana, Florida, the home office, and they would just kind of take the stories and make them more interesting. They would kind of embellish them with some told a friend quotes, according to an insider quotes. I'm like, what? I never reported that. And one of the things they said is that Susan Olsen told a friend that when I'm an old lady, they'll probably put my hair up in curls and charge admission to see senior citizen Cindy. Never said it, had a good sense of humor about it. A little while later, I interviewed Florence Henderson from the Brady Bunch, and just please, one thing, don't print my age. I said, no problem. We gave her a lovely story. She was a hypnotist. She was working as a hypnotist, and she talked about how she was using hypnotism to help spice up her sex life with her husband. Great story. And what did the Enquirer do when I saw the paper? On the cover, Brady Bunch Mom 61, I'm crazy about sex. So there really was nothing about building relationships there. And so I found myself constantly having to send apology bouquets of flowers to these people because they were surprised by the end product. And so was I, until I realized, okay, this is just the way they do business. They don't care about forming friendships. It's just about selling the most papers that week.
I met her and at a very special gala event, and she was nothing but warm and funny and real and affable. And I met her daughters as well, and it was about a month before she passed, and she had gone to Dancing with the Stars, rooting on Maureen McCormick, but it was here on the East Coast, and it was a gala event, and she was just absolutely. And I did get the chance to tell her everything, like on behalf of all of us, thank you for all you've done. And She said that she would write back to every fan that wrote to her, which was extraordinary. And it was one of those amazing things. I was brought into a VIP room, and there was tons of people there. And I was, I knew the people that were running the gala event. Was a friend of the family, and I'm usually like an MC or something. But in this case, I was the invited guest. And they brought me into this VIP room, which was absolutely amazing. She's way over in the corner, being mobbed by the world.
Yeah.
And she's wearing a white pantsuit, her hair glowing with the blonde.
Hair of gold.
Oh my God, it was absolutely beautiful.
Like her
and absolutely incredible. And so you go into this beautiful room that's sort of dimly lit. The folks said, hey, let us bring you in there. I'm like, oh, I don't have to. Let's bring you in. So they brought me in. I'm still at sort of like the door entrance. She's all the way over in the corner. People lined up to see her. Spotlight on her, lighting up the white pantsuit and the hair of gold. I don't know what it was. I have no idea. I don't even know how she was able to do it in this darkened room. She saw me come in. I say it was the black velvet sport coat I had. She literally left everybody over there, the line and the whole bit, darted all the way across, came to me and told the photographer, I want a picture with him. And I'm like, wait, am I in a dream sequence? Is this a Twilight Zone episode? It was spectacular. And there was another scenario a little bit later where she's actually sitting on my lap. And because they squeezed this all together in another shot and with some other folks. And she just popped down and I'm holding up Mrs. Brady. I'm holding up Carol Brady. I'm like, I'm now 11 years old again. And she was just, and of course,
when the legends don't disappoint you, but that's not always the case. But Florence, for sure, one of the sweetest people in the world. I remember I told her about how Robert Reed had been my surrogate dad, and she signed a photograph of her with Robert Reed from the two of them with love. So I'll always have that. Yeah, such a sweetheart. All the Bradys actually are terrific. I've come to know all of them. I love being on your show. Last week I was on Chris Knight and Barry Williams.
Oh,
show.
yes, right?
I've done some things to...
I got to get those guys on here. When you bump into them at the coffee shop.
Sure, yeah, I'll put in a good word. But yeah, I've done some things to aggravate Barry Williams back in the day. And actually during the podcast, he said, I actually hated you. But by the end of our chat, he had absolved me and he forgave me. So all that's in the book. But it's not just Brady's. It sounds like I wrote a Brady Bunch book. And
there you go, right there, right?
There we go. Yeah.
What a great shot.
The Brady's is only one chapter in 39 chapters that goes on to include Britney Spears and Bruce Willis and Drew Barrymore, Sean Penn, Cameron Diaz. So it starts off with my obsession with childhood TV, but then once I go legit and work for places like USA Today and LA Times, I got to interview really all the big stars in Hollywood.
And you also worked with one of the most incredible, prolific producers, his company, Aaron Spelling, one of the titans, and responsible for so many of those shows you talked about, Fantasy Island, The Love Boat, and of course, Family, Dynasty. The Charlie's Angels is incredible. What was it like having an opportunity to work with Aaron Spelling and company?
It was so amazing. I was obsessed with Dynasty. It's both Dallas and Dynasty I loved. Dynasty was abruptly canceled in 1989. The next year I flew out to California. And in 1991, they did a wrap-up miniseries, and I got to work on it. It was incredible. Things don't go the way they did back then. I saw in Variety who was going to be hiring. I reached out. I wrote a letter that I'm pursuing this with a passion of a Carrington and a Colby. And within a few days, I got a call, and they hired me as assistant coordinator. Not on this miniseries, not on this special. It was called The Reunion. And I got to work with John Forsythe and Linda Evans and Joan Collins. And I write a lot about Dynasty in the book. And I'm happy to say that Joan Collins is exactly as you'd imagine her to be. I'll leave it at that.
Inquiring minds want to know, right?
Yeah, well, I say without our Joan Collinses, we wouldn't appreciate our Linda Evanses.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess you sort of infuriated the TV divas and the movie heroes you long idolized.
Yes,
But
that's
then
correct.
what would be, I mean, you were probably chased and hunted down, and people probably threatened you. I don't doubt that you've had, whether maybe it's the PR people that represent them or they
Yeah.
themselves, you had to deal with a lot of stuff and double lock your doors and things. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, there were some legal letters that were sent, and yes, I was chased out of studios sometimes. I remember one of the worst memories was I was covering John Candy's funeral. John Candy, Uncle Buck, SCTV, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, comedy legend, and I hadn't been able to get into the funeral in the church, so I hightailed it to the cemetery where he was going to be entombed, and there was a little service going on in this chapel, and I just took to my knees and blended in with the other mourners, and they all left, and I still waited on my knees as the John Candy procession was about to come in. They recognized me from the church, and they said I had to leave, and I said, no, I'm here praying. And ultimately they said, okay, buddy, we're getting you out of here. So they escorted me out of the chapel as I see the faces of Rhea Perlman, Danny DeVito, Catherine O'Hara, Dan Aykroyd, all looking at me like I'm total tabloid trash. And they were right. Here I was holding up their friend's funeral to try to get some salacious photograph of the casket. You know, I was young and stupid, but that wasn't the end of the story. Now I'm old and stupid.
Well, it's really amazing. And did you have a lot of sleepless nights too?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. I mean, when you're getting told off by these people you love, but again, there was a lot
What
of.
would you say? Would you say I'm just doing my job, or how would you say it to them, since you really enjoyed their work, but you had this role that was given you and task at hand? How did you sort of handle that?
Well, it depended on the assignment. I remember we found out that Melissa Gilbert was getting married to Bruce Boxleitner, and so I just went to her home, and it was a happy occasion. So she actually invited me in, showed me the engagement ring, and gave me some details about what they were planning. So that was great. When you have to go to someone's hospital room and you find out that they're dying, they're not quite as happy to see you there. So it always depended on the assignment. God, I remember I went to, this was for USA Today, actually. I went to Brad Garrett's home from Everybody Loves Raymond, and this was going to be on the record at-home interview with him and his wife and kids. And so I arrive, and Brad, the big guy, he gets me around the shoulder, and he says, Will, we got to talk here. And he told me that his wife was moving out, that they had just separated. So, I mean, I sure didn't expect that. He ended up putting me on the phone with his soon-to-be ex-wife. I wrote a lovely story. Brad sent me a really nice letter saying that he was going to clip out that article and show it to his kids one day as an example of how mommy and daddy always loved them and how the divorce had nothing to do with them. So you never knew the reaction that you were going to get. And only one time was I beaten up. That's the only chapter in the book that I don't identify the name of the celebrity because I'm not allowed to for legal reasons.
That makes total sense. And I imagine, writing a book like this, the time spent dealing with legal must have been quite intense, huh?
Well, sure. But I decided to do something that was very brave, and that I reached out to the people to give them a heads up. Some of the people have passed on. I mean, I crashed Dean Martin's funeral back in the day, and I wasn't going to be able to talk to Dean. So instead, I reached out to Rich Little, one of his really good friends. And Rich wrote a 2-page commentary in the book about Dean's sense of humor. He said Dean probably would have gotten a real kick out of the fact that I was hiding in a tree, spying on who was coming and going to his service. And he was also friends with Frank Sinatra, who was at that same funeral. And I said, well, what do you think Frank would have thought if I crashed his funeral? And Rich said Frank probably would have gotten an axe and chopped down the tree, and then me with it. So I reached out to folks. Bruce Willis, back in the day, he threatened to burn down my house. He didn't like the line of questioning I was asking him about his dates at the time. And so, yeah, he said, I'll find out where you live, Keck, and I'll come burn down your house. You'll have no place to live. Bruce, very sadly, is non-communicative now. He's in a place where he's not able to speak. So I reached out to his moonlighting co-star, Sybil Shepherd, and she wrote a very nice one-page commentary about how he had a great sense of humor, and how he really was not actually going to burn down my house. He probably was just playing with me. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Just his dry sense of humor, right?
I mean, I guess, but it was healing. It did provide a chance for me to kind of clean up some old messes. I remember the Desperate Housewives. There's a lot in the book about Desperate Housewives. I actually got to be the reporter who was on set more than any other. And for the most part, it went well. But I was doing an at-home interview with Marcia Cross. I arrived at her home. It was supposed to be a very nice puff piece to meet her new twin girls. Well, that morning, nude photos had leaked of Marcia. And so I was debating whether or not to bring that up in the interview. It was kind of like an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. Do it, ask, and then don't do it, don't ask. Well, the devil won, and I at the end of the interview, I asked about these nude photos. It kind of spoiled the whole lovely day I'd had with her. So when the book was coming out, I reached out to Marcia, and Marcia was very forgiving. She said, "Willie, you're too hard on yourself. I choose to think about all the wonderful interviews we had. That was one day." So yeah, the words she said were very sweet, and she kind of offered more. She talked about her real anger was toward the person who snuck into her backyard and took those nude photos. She was just having a private moment, as we do. I think she was showering in her backyard, and she paid $10,000 to have those photos go away, and they reappeared again. So that was where her fury was centered, not on me for just bringing them up.
There was that time I remember reading about, and another still beloved entertainer, comedian, television legend, Carol Burnett, where she had to actually sue the National Enquirer for some stories that, she felt were inaccurate. So sometimes that happens too, right?
Very specifically about alcoholism. I mean, the Enquirer won almost every lawsuit. When I was there, they had the same attorney who represented President Bill Clinton. So it was a very busy lawyer. Carol won because they claimed that she was drinking, that she was an alcoholic. Carol had alcoholism in her family. It was a very sensitive subject for her, and she battled the Enquirer, and she won. She won millions. So the Enquirer was extra careful after that. But the way they would get away with a lot of stuff, Jim, was to say, she told a friend. I think I was mentioning earlier about that tactic they had, and that really allowed them to kind of get away with people having conversations in their bedrooms. How would anyone know what Will and Jada were talking about in the privacy of their bedroom? But if Jada told a friend that Will told her in bed, that's the way it happened. But,
wasn't there something that was on one of the covers involving Vivian Vance as well? Well, beloved Ethel Mertz.
Yeah, I talk about this being my first awareness of the Enquirer. There was a little convenience store near us in upstate New York, and I would go there to look at comic books, Green Lantern, The Flash, or I would go there to collect packs of the Three's Company trading cards or Happy Days trading cards. Those were the ones that came with this really rock hard shard of gum with little sugar on top to make it look edible.
Yes.
But I was in this little world, and I noticed on the rack there was a National Enquirer with a photo of Vivian Vance, and it was the brave last days of I Love Lucy's Ethel Mertz. And I was just kind of thrown that this person that I watched every day on TV after school was not Ethel Mertz. It was an actress named Vivian Vance. She was dying, and maybe by that time I was seeing this headline was already dead. Vivian Vance, there's a photo I have in my book side by side by my own grandmother. They looked very, very close. And I was kind of rocked that, wow, yeah, these people are not just funny characters. They're actual living, breathing people that are dying. And I actually ended up collecting celebrity obituaries. I would clip them out of the paper, and then I would go to the library and I would clip out the clippings of the obits of people I'd missed. I remember I had the whole cast of Addams Family in this binder. So just so macabre that, I don't know, like 10 years later, 15 years later, I would actually be the one writing these obituaries.
I remember hearing that news when she passed and how sad it was because she wasn't, of an upper senior age. And it was a big surprise when Vivian passed, and a great loss on so many different levels. You've really, like I mentioned, celebrity weddings, funerals, hospital rooms. exclusive scoops and photographs. Even got yourself involved in what was very dangerous, but it was a high-speed pursuit, one of Britney Spears and another of Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The one with Elizabeth Taylor was for the Enquirer, and we had found out that she was going to be going to the hospital for some kind of surgical procedure, and they didn't know what hospital she was going to. So I did a stakeout of her home for a few hours, and then when she left, yeah, I started following her from a distance. But as you see in the movies, her driver sped up, I sped up. And before we knew it, we were zooming down the streets of Bel Air. And she was going to the hospital, Jim. She wasn't going to Rodeo to do shopping. So I, in that case, the little angel on my shoulder made the right decision. I turned over on the side of the road and let her go. But yeah, Britney Spears was another situation. That was for USA Today. I was in the back seat of a paparazzi's car doing a story about a day in the life of the paparazzi. And we ended up in a 90-mile-per-hour chase down the 405 going after Britney and Kevin Federline.
That's incredible, huh?
Wild. I got in trouble for that one. The publicist was very, very upset with me, thinking that, I was helping put Britney's life in danger. Her child, actually her Kevin Federline's child, was in the back seat. Again, I was just a bystander here. I was spending a day in the life of a paparazzi. I didn't know where they were going to go. We ended up going after Britney, but I was blamed by her publicist, and she tried to blackball me for a few years. But I was able to overcome that.
Many of these people too, you've become, there's an admiration or at least some respect that has sort of come back full circle in a way, right? Tell us about how that has happened, which may surprise many of our viewers.
Well, I learn from these encounters. In fact, every chapter ends with a lesson learned. It's something that helped me open my eyes and grow. And I think these lessons actually are lessons that people can relate to in their own lives. But yeah, you can't change your past. I'm telling about my past in the book, but it doesn't mean that that's who you're going to be in your future and going forward in the future. So yeah, I was lucky to get a second chance, and I've worked with the celebrities that are in the book in a lot of different capacities. You mentioned Home and Family. I welcomed them on to Home and Family, and we produced some lovely segments with them, pitching their own books and movies. So I've had time in between the Enquirer years and the release of my book to make a lot of amends with these folks. And that came in handy when it was time to reach out to them to contribute to the book.
And there is Mark Steinis and, of course, Christina Ferrara, the original hosts of Home and Family on the Hallmark channel. And Mark just emceed your book event in LA, right, recently?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, last week at Barnes & Noble at the Grove here in LA. He did a Q&A with me, which was so strange to be on the other side of things. But he was great. Mark asked the best questions. He surprised me. He didn't hold anything back. But yeah, we had a great turnout. We sold out the book. Which
is awesome. So you were a producer on that series, huh? On Home and Family. It's a great show on Hallmark Channel.
I love that. 7 years on the show, and I was
7 years, huh?
The show ran for 9 years. I was on for the last 7. And I was lucky to produce these 2-hour reunion specials for Home and Family. We did a 2-hour Love Boat Christmas special with the entire cast and Charo, all in their Pacific Princess costumes. And we did a Knots Landing Christmas, and we had the whole cast of Little House on the Prairie in a covered wagon arriving to our show. And we did a Waltons 2-hour reunion, and I was able to get the old narrator, the executive producer, the creator of the Waltons, Earl Hamner, right before he died. He did one of those introductions to our show, as he did with every episode of the Waltons, and he even did the Goodnight John Boy at the end. So what a treat it was to get to bring these stars together. And we cooked with them, and we crafted with them, and we did games with them. It was crazy. A lot of fun, a lot of good times. All those photos are in the book.
It's all there. It's incredible. Also working on Josh Gates tonight on Discovery, huh?
Yes, yeah, there were some situations there. I mentioned, Kelsey Grammer, who there's a whole chapter on him in the book, a long chapter. When I was at Josh Gates, we were booking guests for Shark Week, and Kelsey Grammer had been booked during that week. every guest that week had to talk about sharks in some way or another. So I didn't get a chance to do a pre-interview with Kelsey. So I asked his rep, I said, hey, by any chance does Kelsey have any shark stories that you can tell on the show? And she said, I have no idea. Josh can ask him during their interview. So I prepped Josh with a lot of questions. I wasn't able to find any connection between Kelsey and water sports. I know that Kelsey had a heart attack in the ocean. So I said, be careful about talking too much about ocean problems. But Kelsey was on Josh's show, and in the interview, Josh asked, "So Kelsey, any fun shark stories?" And Kelsey got kind of serious. He said, "Well, I don't have any fun shark stories, but I had a brother who was eaten by a shark," and that's true. And I missed that in my preparation for the interview. But yeah, he had two half brothers who were out scuba diving, and their bodies were believed to have been eaten by a shark. So that was not a great moment. Josh came storming out into the area where all the producers were, and he said, "Will, this has got to be the biggest F up of your career." And little did he know that I had so many worse F ups in my career that are all in this book. But yeah, I don't know. Kelsey and I just can't get a break. We keep on clashing.
Kathleen Walker is watching in New York City. She had a question. She wanted to know, was there anything you refused to do to get a story? Good question, yeah. Kathleen.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. I had a hard time with the legends when somebody died. I remember Andy Griffith's son overdosed, and I was called to break the news to Andy. So I actually had his number. I was like, "Please don't answer the phone. Please don't." And he answered the phone, and he said, "Oh God, is it true?" And I said, I'm afraid so." He said, I can't talk now, please. And I let him go. And the Enquirer, they were ruthless. They said, "Call him back, get some quotes, find out what his reaction is." And I flatly refused to do that. I just felt that would be overly exploitative. And I mean, we all lose loved ones, and the last thing we want is to be hounded by the press when we're just trying to grieve the loss of a loved one. So yeah, and there were certain times when we were asked to go knock on celebrities' doors. I usually would, but in some cases when it was really distasteful and I knew that the celeb would never in a million years actually talk to me, I just drove around the block a few times and then said they weren't home. I used my judgment.
Was there anybody that you really, really deeply admired and loved and just had this real affinity for, and then when you look back, I mean, there's a lot of different people, I'm sure, and you've sort of come around in a different direction, but anybody specific, one or two, where you really were like, boy, I really liked them, and maybe I wish I didn't write that particular story or what have you, just because you really had a real affinity for that particular person?
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure. I talk about the Brady's obviously, but I mean, Mary Tyler Moore, I had a run in with her. I mean, just I think about every one of the legends that I adored. It's the list is too long to name. The Golden Girls. I remember I was a huge Golden Girls fan, and I was at USA Today, and my editor called and said, "Hey, good news, we have a Golden Girls story for you." I said, "Great, what do I get to do?" She said, "Start working on their obituaries." And then I had to actually end up calling the different Golden Girls to get quotes about each other to save for their obituaries that would run one day. I mean, just kind of macabre stuff. That's actually not even in the book. That's a little bonus story for you, Jim, and your viewers today.
Really appreciate that. We have a graphic JMS exclusive. you know what all that's about. Yeah. Now, when I was a kid, I used to collect. I mean, we had a big collection of TV guides.
Yeah.
And you worked for TV Guide. You were senior editor?
Senior editor, and I had a column in there for...
Right. Tell us about the years with the beloved... I miss the TV Guides. I wish we still got them.
Oh my gosh. Well, TV Guide is actually still in publication, believe it or not. It's hard to find. It's a big magazine format. It's been that way, actually, I think, for like 20 years. Mainly for subscribers now. Hard to find in newsstands or in the grocery store. But yeah, I covered Desperate Housewives a lot, but also I covered Lost. And I was assigned to do an interview with 4 actors from Lost in a roundtable setting. And the actors were Emily DeRaven, Dominic Moynihan, Jorge Garcia, and Naveen Andrews. And part of my job was to ask personal questions. That's what I was brought on to do. And in the interview, I did talk about plot lines, but I did ask about the relationships. And Emily DeRaven, very sadly, had just filed for divorce that week. And when I came to her, she said, I don't think it's appropriate to be talking about this with my co-stars. And she got up crying and ran away. And I felt like the size of a crumb. I wanted to apologize to her, but before I could, she actually apologized to me through her publicist, saying that she was just very emotional and didn't mean to sink the interview like that. Since then, Emily's become a friend. We worked on something together during the quarantine. She, we're social media buds, liking each other's family photos and things like that. So even in the darkest of times, there's always a possibility to turn things around and start fresh.
And then there's Scientology. You landed on the Scientologist dreaded suppressives list. Tell our viewers what the suppressives list actually is and how you ended up on it.
Yeah, so in the media, there's certain names that the Scientologists are known to have, who they label suppressives, untrustworthy people not to talk to. And I was all set at USA Today to do an at-home interview with Kirstie Alley, who was a Scientologist. And I'd never met her before, but 2 days before the interview, her manager calls and says, "Will, I'm sorry, you can't do the interview," because I was on this suppressives list. And I was racing in my mind, when have I ever done something to upset the Scientologists? Well, it occurred to me that I had interviewed Kelsey Grammer, on the Emmy Awards red carpet. And I'd asked him why all of the Cheers co-stars had appeared on Frasier for Kirstie. Every one of them had. Shelley Long and Ted Danson, Woody Harrelson. And he said that we've asked Kirstie a few times to come on the show, but Kirstie refuses because she's a Scientologist, and the Scientologists are against psychiatrists, and Dr. Fraser Crane is a psychiatrist. So it was a kind of an interesting item. So I reached out to Kirstie at that time, and Kirstie actually chose to comment, and she said, the only way I would ever do Frasier is if I got to do Frasier. Kind of a naughty quote, but she wanted to run exactly as she said it. And we did. And apparently, while Kirstie thought it was funny, her church did not. And I ended up on this list. When things were kind of worked out with Kirstie, she invited me back to do the interview. But by that time, the Enquirer, or rather USA Today, said, no, we'll move on. If you don't want to talk to us, then we prefer not to talk to you. And I do appreciate that loyalty, actually, that USA Today had. They stuck up for the reporters.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which makes total sense. You know, in addition to also working with TV Guide and National Enquirer, you mentioned also People Magazine too, huh?
Yeah. I remember one assignment that I write about in the book. Do you remember a show, Jim, called The Surreal Life?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. I think they're trying to bring it back with reality stars, but The Surreal Life took a group of B, C-list actors. They were called, kind of a not nice way to identify people, but that's what they were known as. And they put them in a house together. So I was assigned to spend a day with them. And one of the women in the house at this time was Tammy Faye Baker. Well, I was with her. She had just found out.
Christopher Knight was on that. And
right? There were a few seasons of that. This season was, it was, who else was it? It was Eric Estrada, Ron Jeremy, the adult film star. But that day, they had chosen to take the whole cast to a nudist colony in Palm Springs. So I knew where we were going, but the cast didn't know. The producers wanted to surprise them. So I was with Tammy when we were led into the nudist colony lobby, and a man came around the corner. He had a shirt on, but no pants. And Tammy just burst into tears, as she always did back in the 80s. And she ran out saying, "That's not right. I shouldn't be seeing a man naked who's not my husband." And I comforted her, and I had some of that famous Tammy Faye mascara on my shirt that day. I wish I'd saved it and framed it. But yes, that was an assignment for People Magazine. Actually, another story I did for People, I spent a day with the cast of 90210. They had done a reunion, and I mean, we're all just reeling from the loss of Shannon. I actually, there's something in my book that I didn't come out and actually say, because Shannon was with us. And I'll talk about it now because she just passed yesterday. I can't believe I'm saying that. But this was a weird story. We had at the time, Shannon and Tori were bitter enemies. Something had happened, or a variety of things had happened at the 90210 set. Shannon had been released from the show. And we had a story that Shannon had hired a hitman to try to kill Tori Spelling. Now, to this day, it seems crazy. But the hitman actually, he said that he was not going to do it, that he wanted to expose Shannon for putting this hit out because he thought she was dangerous. So we went to his home and he tried to get Shannon on the phone. We were listening in with it was wired. A wiretap was on the phone. He had her number. Her answer machine came on. So, I mean, he did have some kind of relationship with her. We never could get confirmation that was happening. And we obviously never ran the story. But these are the kind of things that we would investigate. A lot of things never even made it to print because they turned out to be just false rumors. I mean, reports that people were HIV positive. That was a big thing back in the 90s when AIDS was killing so many people. And we had to make sure that we didn't get that story wrong, or we would have ended up in court like Howard Burnett's case.
Also worked for the Los Angeles Times, too. Did you enjoy that, the Daily?
Oh, I love the LA Times. I had a great interview with Johnny Depp. It's not in the book because I didn't upset Johnny Depp. These are only stories of celebrities that I upset for one reason or another. But yeah, Johnny was 3 hours late to our interview. It was at the Chateau Marmont, and even though he liked to hang out there, sleep there, he had a home very close by. And his publicist kept on saying, "Johnny's so sorry, he's on his way." And he finally arrived after 3 hours, and he's so charming that you immediately forgive the guy. And he gave me a very personal story about his childhood that had been anything but idyllic. Yeah, LA Times offered access to the biggest stars. Susan Sarandon I interviewed, and I remember I did a piece with Anthony Hopkins. It was a wonderful run that I had at LA Times. Very grateful for that time.
Did you actually wrestle a bear too?
I did. This was also for the Enquirer. There's photos of this in the chapter. You know,
I hope you got combat pay.
You know, they like to do these stories where the Enquirer spent a day in the life of. So they one time they had special effects people make me up into an 80-year-old man. And I was in my mid-20s. And so I spent 2 days as an old man, seeing if I could get into the movies for a discount, if I would be kicked out of a club because I wasn't cool, like an ageism kind of a story. It was fascinating. But yeah, they also had me wrestle an 800-pound bear. He had all of his teeth. He wasn't drugged. His name was Bogey. And the kicker was that they put a marshmallow in my mouth, and they had Bogey come and eat the marshmallow out of my mouth. I don't know what I was thinking. Again, it was a stupid 20-something tabloid, goofball. And all these photos are in the back of the book. There's a chapter that I mentioned where I was beaten up by a celebrity, and because I can't run photos of this celebrity, I have photos instead of Bogey beating me up instead.
Is that the Emmy winner? That
yes, an Emmy winner on an 90s show is all I'm saying in the book. He did not like that I showed up to his home, and he beat me until I was bloodied.
Did you? So I guess you weren't on the Christmas card list anymore after that.
Not on his. I was on one of his lists, but it wasn't the Christmas card.
Not that one.
No.
Also inappropriately fondled by somebody too?
This was just bizarre. I call this my Me Too moment, although I personally wasn't offended. I was just sort of like, what the heck happened? I was brand new to LA. I think I was like 21. And I had no contacts in the entertainment business. I wanted to just get in somehow. So I got a job as a security guard, and I got a primo placement. They had me backstage at the Emmys rehearsal. So I was guarding the statues as the celebrities came and rehearsed their presentations. The Emmys were going to happen the next day. So one of the people that came out, such a remote celebrity here, kind of random, an actor named Richard Mulligan, who was the star of Empty Nest, but I knew him best.
Yeah.
He played Burt Campbell on Soap.
Soap, right? Exactly. Yeah, on ABC.
Yeah. So he did his rehearsal, and he came off stage, and I'm like, God, I'm not supposed to talk to the stars, but I just love this guy. So I chatted him up. He was very, very lovely. And then before he left, he kind of looked both ways, and he reached down to my crotch and grabbed me. He grabbed my junk, and he gave me a wink and walked away. So I have no idea what that was about, but I did reach out for the book to one of his soap co-stars, an actress named Diana Canova, who had played Corinne Tate on soap.
Sure, yeah.
Corinne, yeah. And so Diana said that it was not a sexual grope. It was more like a Goomba man-to-man locker room kind of a thing. So, okay. I don't know if when I go to the gym next time in the locker room, if I start grabbing people that way, I don't know that it'll go over too well. Or maybe it will. I mean, I'll make some new friends. But bizarre. I think he thought it was some kind of an autograph that he was giving me, or a photo, like a little memento that I could carry with me for the rest of my life. But I think I would have rather had an autograph.
Henry Winkler said, Will Keck loves Hollywood, knows Hollywood, and writes about his idiosyncratic journey through the dark and the light of Hollywood. And Melissa Gilbert, here's the thing, Will owns it. He owns it all. Enjoy these stories from the great adventure that is the life of my friend Will Keck. So a lot of the folks that you were covering have sort of, is it seen the light, or what has happened? Is it because you then sort of put, your hat up in that world and became, because you're a respected producer, journalist as well. So because you sort of went into that area, they came around. How did that, and when did that start happening for you?
Oh, many years ago. I was only at the Enquirer for 3 years, and then I went on to the publications that you listed at the start of our show. But yeah, these celebrities, many of them have known me in my legit role as a producer. And I was really lucky. In the front of the book, I have, about 15 quotes from so many of my idols who are applauding the book. I see your Genie bottle in the background. Barbara Eden, Genie, wrote a lovely little blurb about the book. And
there's the bottle. Yeah.
Yes. And you mentioned Henry and Donna Mills and Joan Van Ark, and Linda Gray writes a lovely page in the book.
She's amazing. Yeah.
Love Linda. Mrs. Walton, and all the people there's Barbara. Yeah, I was lucky enough to do a Q&A with her just a couple months ago.
Is she not amazing?
Show. Yeah, look at her. She's like,
she loves her fans. I was at an event not that long ago. People waited literally 4 hours in line just to get a chance to just have 6 seconds with her. She totally embraced the whole I Dream of Jeannie, the role of Jeannie. Some people, when they have those kinds of iconic roles, they run from them. Well, that was then, and I'm not doing it. She just totally went with it, which I think is very cool, because that longevity continues because she's helped it continue.
Yeah, you think about some celebrities who just are so bothered by their association with one of the classic shows they were on. You think of Tina Louise, who played Ginger on Gilligan's Island, who ran from that role all of her life, and Eve Plum from the Brady Bunch, Jan Brady, that she's kind of begrudgingly done reunions with her castmates. But I just think it's so sad when the thing that the audience loves you most for, they want to give you love, is the thing that just kind of makes you recoil. When you're lucky enough to hit the jackpot and have one of these iconic roles that will last long after you're gone, you can choose to embrace it or run from it. Why not embrace it and take the love every single day of your life?
You also tapped into the soap opera world too, Soap Opera Digest, and tell us about, the soap stories on in our house and all the different series. And we've had several of the previous cast members on these shows join us here too. What was it like tapping into that fantastic world? Wasn't there something, weren't you, if I'm not mistaken, involved? I remember when Days of Our Lives did that whole, was it the Salem Strangler? And they were knocking off everybody, including Alice Horton, Frances Reed. She was in the kitchen, slumped over. I was like, Marlena, everybody, Mickey and Maggie and Mickey. And what was that like being involved in that?
Yeah, that was bizarre. This was a story for the LA Times. And because I had worked for a soap opera magazine, they, I guess, considered me a soap opera expert. So they hired me to cover this mass exodus. The Salem stalker was just going crazy in Salem, butchering the residents. But they were mainly killing off the senior actors. And by senior, I mean like 50 plus. So I saw an ageism story there. And these people, although they were ultimately all brought back to life, they really thought they were being fired. I remember sitting with an actor, Suzanne Rogers, who's played Maggie Horton on that show since the dawn of creation. And she was sobbing in her dressing room saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm taking care of my mother still, and I'm going to lose the house. So this ageism story created quite a stir. And I've always sort of wondered if part of the reason they brought them all back was because I called them out for killing off these people who just happen to have some wrinkles and gray hair like I do now.
So, folks that love Days of Our Lives and some of the favorites that are on Days of Our Lives, he might be partially responsible for why your favorite stars stayed on that series, because he spoke up.
or not. I'm sure Ken Corday, the producer.
Yeah, I'm sure the Corday family
his plan all along was to bring back these people.
Made some decisions, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
There's, as I was saying, there's so many people. We're just sprinkling in a few things here just to show people the scope. Of course, Charlotte Rae and the Facts of Life.
A reunion I did for Home and Family, and Kim Fields there on the left, who played Tootie, she said such a great time at that reunion. She was so impressed that I got George Clooney to contribute and Molly Ringwald reunion that she tried to hire me to produce a special she wanted to do about her life. And I have her in a chapter where she ended up treating me more like her babysitter. She actually had me babysitting her son.
Wow.
And a producer. So she had me go get a pizza. I'm like, wait a minute. I think I think I'm actually her gopher more than I am her co-producer here. So that didn't go so well.
Charlotte Rae, Lisa Welter, Todd Bridges. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember when Charlotte Rae, we had her son on because he wrote a book about, his life and his mother as well. And this was about a year ago. Do you remember when Charlotte Rae, when she had the dark hair, she was Miss Molly, the mail lady on Sesame Street? She was on Sesame Street and she was Miss Molly, the mail lady. She would come and deliver the mail to Sesame Street, to Mr. Hooper and to Gordon. And
I certainly remember Susan and Gordon and Mr. Hooper and Bob.
She was on. She was Miss Molly, the mail lady on. She had jet black hair, and she was in her male uniform with the cap, and she was on Sesame Street.
Gosh, you stumped me there. Actually, I do not remember. I remember how traumatized I was when Mr. Hooper died.
Remember? Now that was actually one of the first times that, which but for the viewers, where a children's television series actually spoke of death.
Yeah.
And they actually had the character pass away and acknowledged it. And
had a hard time with it.
I've actually thought it was smart when shows did that. I remember when Douglas Watson, who was Mackenzie Corey on Another World, in real life was on vacation with his family, I think in New Mexico or Arizona, and he passed away of a heart attack. And now one of the central characters of this beloved soap opera on NBC, Another World, Mac and Rachel and Ada and the whole thing, he died, and how they actually wrote that into the script. He was so irreplaceable as an actor and as the role of Mackenzie Corey that they wrote the passing of Matt Corey into Another World and did a whole beautiful treatment, which I thought was nice. And I think when they do that, as opposed to sometimes bringing in somebody that doesn't look anything like or have the voice like or the mannerisms of the original, it's kind of like the Dick Sargent switch with Bewitched.
Yeah, I don't like that route either. Yeah, actually, it's funny. in college, in my college paper, I wrote a whole story about this phenomenon you're talking about, and there's been so many cases. I mean, one of the biggest was when Jock Ewing, when Jim Davis died during the run of Dallas, and they killed off his character, and Coach on Cheers, and they had Coach die. There were a couple of bailiffs on Night Court, Selma Diamond, who died, and then they had to write that in. Give Me a Break. Remember when the dad, Dolph Sweet, died, and they had to deal with his death.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, it's and the Waltons. I mean, when Grandpa Walton suddenly died, I was completely devastated. And then Grandma had a stroke, and they wrote that in. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of hiding people. Life is about a lot of living and death, and certainly it works on some shows better than others. But I think it's an opportunity really for to celebrate someone for one final time. So yeah, it's those moments. God, there's so many others that I know that.
I know
Diana Hyland from.
Oh yes, Eight Is Enough, and replaced then by Betty Buckley. Right.
Buckley, yeah, but these resonated with me. And when my dad died, I was 5, and seeing TV children going through the loss of their parents, really, I think, sort of helped me feel less alone.
And wasn't at that time Diana Hyland dating John Travolta?
That's correct.
Yes, I remember that. Right. Absolutely. At that time, and then she had passed away, and she was on, for those watching who are not familiar, she was the first Mrs. Bradford, the mom on Eight Is Enough, and then they brought in Betty Buckley, who did a wonderful job as well. These series, that we all grew up with. I remember hearing too that another Aaron Spelling, incredible production. I think I read something once where he was asked, his personal favorite of all the great shows and all the iconic shows that he put together. What's one of the ones he is most proud of? And I believe he had said something to the effect of it being Family, with Sada Thompson and James Broderick and Christy McNichol and Meredith Baxter Burney and Quinn Cummings, Gary Frank. And there was talk after James Broderick had passed away of cancer very early in like 1982. He was in his 50s, right after the series had wrapped by a year or two. In later years, they were going to do a reboot, sort of, or reunion show of Family. And that and they were going to acknowledge where Doug Lawrence, James Broderick, the character had passed away, and that Kate and the kids had moved on and they're doing their own thing. And most wanted to, I think, do it, but then something big happened in the world that sort of kiboshed the whole thing. But they were that close to having.
Oh man, that would have been wonderful. I mean,
that's a house that I went to see when I was on a TV shoot, and I went to the Brady Bunch house, and I had to go up to Pasadena to see the house that was used for Family, which is a beautiful house.
It's a great show. I do have one story in the book with one of those cast members, Meredith Baxter, went on to play Elise Keaton on Family Ties. She was getting married. It was her 3rd marriage to a man. She's married to a woman now, very happily married to a woman. But this was her 3rd marriage, and I crashed the reception. And I think people are curious as to how you crash a wedding. Well, the key is just buy a gift and walk in with the other invited guests. So I bought a $5 picture frame at Target, wrapped it nicely, and just walked in, set it down on the gift table. And then I just mingled until everyone took their seats. And then there were 2 place cards left that hadn't been claimed. So my date and I ended up just sitting down there. Unfortunately, we were seated right next to the minister who had performed the wedding. So we had to kind of get around that. But then when it was time for the cake cutting, I just jumped up with all the aunts and uncles and took a picture of the cake cutting, and it appeared in the next week's National Enquirer.
Sly devil. I tell you.
Weddings was much more fun than funerals. I'll tell you that. I felt a lot less guilty just having a free chicken, instead of taking one of the flowers that was passed out.
What were some of the funerals that you attended?
Oh my goodness, I've already mentioned Dean Martin, and I mentioned John Candy. What else did we talk? We talked about, the time I met Mary Tyler Moore. there was the Dick Van Dyke Show. That was a long time ago, but one of the
Oh,
supporting characters in that show was a guy named Maury Amsterdam.
oh, sure,
And
of course,
so
legend. Yeah.
Maury I'd become friendly with Maury and his wife, and I became friends with him because I did go to his hospital room when he was very sick. And Maury said that he learned that the better way to treat the Enquirer was to welcome them in. So he actually had me sit on his bed and he kind of told me about what was going on. And then, so yes, his wife invited me to his funeral, and Mary Tyler Moore was there. And I approached Mary and I said, Mary, I said, I'm friendly with Maury. I'm covering his funeral as a reporter. Could I get a quote? And she said, who are you with? I said, well, I'm with the National Enquirer. And she just kind of backed away and said, absolutely not. And I said, again, I'm so sorry for the loss of your friend. And I just want to say, you look so beautiful today. And she softened and she saw me as a human instead of just an Enquirer bad boy. And she said, well, hold on. I will tell you that Maury was a dear friend and I'm going to miss him terribly. Not a big earth-shattering quote, but the fact that Mary Tyler Moore, for the first time in many years, gave a quote on the record to the National Enquirer was a big deal, that she was playing ball with us. So even in the darkest of places, you can find a way to connect human to human if you just kind of just show some dignity and respect and don't overstay your welcome.
Exactly right. Yeah, it does make total sense. You mentioned Dick Van Dyke. What was it like meeting this icon? God, we love him.
Dick, I wasn't Dick's favorite person for a while. There's a chapter in Dick Van Dyke where Dick and Andy Griffith were very close friends. And
yes,
I think because of my years at the Enquirer, after I left the Enquirer, I over-described things. I had too much detail in my articles. And when I had met Andy Griffith, I talked about the spots on his hand. He had age spots like I do now. There was no reason I needed to mention this, but I did. And Andy Griffith, he ignored it. But Dick Van Dyke, on behalf of his friend, wrote a letter to the LA Times saying, I don't think that Andy has particularly spotty hands, but if he did, he should take one of his hands and punch you in the face. Another time for the LA Times, I was writing a story on Diagnosis Murder, and a lot of the critics were criticizing Dick's show for being the prune juice down version of shows like Hill Street Blues. And Dick did not like that, and he wrote a letter to Army Archer, the variety columnist, and he said, I personally have no use for prune juice, but if I did, I would certainly find a use for the paper that your articles are written on. So that was not good. But years later, the photo you just showed of me and Dick, that was at his home when I arrived at Dick's house to do an interview with him, an on-the-record interview for his induction into the Screen Actors Guild Lifetime Achievement, those recipients. He greeted me at the door. He had a collection of Laurel and Hardy memorabilia. One of Laurel and Hardy's bowler caps was right there in the entrance.
Oh, he was a big fan of them. Yeah.
Arlene made me fresh squeezed lemonade, and we had a lovely talk and a photograph by the Christmas tree. So yes, I think that I've made amends with Dick, and I did get to write a beautiful cover story tribute to Andy Griffith years later, and I was able to get Ron Howard, his TV son, to write a beautiful tribute to him that ran on TV Guide. So yeah, I think I made it up to both Andy and Mr. Van Dyke.
That's so cool. That's great. That's fantastic. Again, talking about these legendary, iconic people in our lives. Here's another great shot. Robin Williams and Mork and Mindy, huh? That
was great. So TV Guide was going through some changes. They were struggling. So there were lots of layoffs. And finally, it was my time. So when I was laid off, I had lined up this interview with Robin Williams and Pam Dauber, reunited for the first time since Mork and Mindy. She was guest starring on Robin's sitcom that didn't last very long. And I'm like, okay, please, I'll leave. I'll leave the TV Guide, but let me do this interview. So they let me do this last interview. And I knew that this would be one of my Christmas cards. And in fact, it was. So the morning of the interview, I went to a costume shop and I was looking for those striped Mork suspenders. He always wore those as Mork on Mork and Mindy. And I was only able to find a children's style of suspenders. So while I was interviewing Pam and Robin, these suspenders were hiking up my jeans. It was very, very uncomfortable. And there was a point in the interview when Pam Dauber Dauber mentioned the word balls, and I knew based on their senses of humor that I could make a joke that mine were killing me because of these suspenders riding up my jeans. And they both laughed, and Robin Williams looked down and made a joke that he could tell what religion I was because my jeans were so tight, when it was classic one-liners he was now giving to me. So yes, this photo was taken just a few months before depression got the best of Robin and he ended up taking his life. I treasure that photo.
Absolutely.
And he did a nanu too there with his hands.
There it is.
Yeah.
That's incredible, right?
Yeah, nanu.
Zsa Zsa Gabor too, huh? And her husband, and there had been a car accident. There he is in the neck brace.
This is Zsa Zsa with her husband, Prince Frederick von Anhalt, and Prince Freddie. He was a prince by having purchased his principality. So Zsa Zsa became Princess Zsa Zsa for a while. But yeah, Freddie loved to be in the Enquirer. And he would always call me with these weird stunts. So this one, yes, he'd been hit by a car, and he called me from his hospital bed, offering me the exclusive interview. He said, "You got to hurry though. Come here, Zsa Zsa's here. You'll miss her if you don't get here." So I zoomed over to the hospital. I found him in ICU, and he said Zsa Zsa had left to go do an interview with Entertainment Tonight. And I said, "Entertainment Tonight? You promised me the exclusive." He said, "Yes, I promised you the print exclusive, but Entertainment Tonight has the video exclusive." So I ended up having to drive Freddie home to Zsa Zsa's house in Bel Air. And on the way home, we passed the place that he had been hit by a car, and he got out and allowed me to photograph him, pointing to the place where the accident had happened. So yeah, this guy was up for anything. Another time he called to say that he had been kicked out of Bally's Fitness because some of the women there were complaining that they could see his, in his words, manhood through his white Speedo when he got out of the jacuzzi. So I suggested that we take him to the Beverly Hilton pool and have him wear that white Speedo and do a before and after shot after he went in the pool and let the readers of the Enquirer figure out if it was too revealing or not. And he said, sure. So we actually did that. Unbelievable. But there were certain celebrities like Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold. If they weren't in the Enquirer, they would do things to get put in the Enquirer. What a fun way to live life, I think.
I had always, a lot of people, I think, thought that too. Like, I wonder if they're doing these crazy stunts or different things because they want, even negative attention still is attention in many ways, right?
For sure. I mean, it's all those magazines like, In Style and In Touch, and they had the love triangle that ran for years with Jennifer Aniston, Brad Pitt, and Angelina Jolie. And people were like, well, why aren't they suing? Well, it was great publicity. I mean, their faces were on the checkout stand every week, upping their star power. And as long as they didn't print anything totally salacious, like about alcoholism or abuse or cancer, then they just looked the other way.
Did you ever cover the Lisa Marie Presley, Michael Jackson marriage?
I remember when that news came in, I was at the Enquirer at that time, and I thought it was completely a lie. I'm like, no way did that happen. Well, it obviously turned out to be true. I did meet Lisa Marie briefly, but what I guess I want to say is that I interviewed Priscilla not long ago. Priscilla Presley had reunited with her Dallas castmates for the first time in a long time, and I did a Q&A with the cast, and she was obviously still reeling from that loss. I mean, very fragile. But she was getting herself back. She was finding her sense of humor again. And she did tell me some stories about Elvis that I appreciated. I asked Priscilla if she thought that Elvis would have been a fan of Dallas. And she said, oh, absolutely. I mean, look at Graceland. It was just like the Ewing South Fork estate. So I really appreciated her doing her best to come out of her suffering to play with me a bit.
Look at this shot. MASH. How cool is this?
Yeah, that was a total photobomb. I did not do an interview with the cast of MASH.
You dove in there?
I did. Another reporter did. I was at USA Today, and another reporter, Bill Kevaney, I believe, was the one who did the interview with this gang. And I just saw this was
what a fantastic shot to even get that opportunity, right?
I jumped in, yeah. But I did end up producing a mini MASH reunion at Home and Family. So I did get a there with Jamie Farr and Mike Farrell.
Jason Priestley, Luke Perry, of course.
This was one of my childhood dreams, being in a hotel room with Luke Perry and Jason Priestley.
And Jason Priestley in there.
This was for a Lifetime movie that I believe Luke was starring in and Jason had directed. And so I got them together because, again, I was all about reunions, getting people back together.
Together,
And
right?
this was a super fun interview. Gosh, it's just so weird to think that Luke is now with Shannon, that they're both gone.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Another Dynasty reunion at Home and Family. I was able to get Pamela Sue Martin and John James back together on TV for the first time since she'd quit the show in 1984. So this was a big thing to have 5 cast members together. Super fun. Love those Dynasty cast members. Joan Collins. Joan wouldn't do that reunion, but I did get her to come on a couple years later to make spaghetti bolognese in our kitchen set. It was a delicious. Joan, such a character she is. Look at
Yeah.
Diane Carroll. I got to meet Diane Carroll at the Emmys. Dominique Devereaux. And the reason I was able to get Joan Collins on A Home and Family was because Joan was very close with Diane, and Diane was supposed to come on Home and Family. And when I called her manager, they have the same manager. I said, "We lost Diane, but let's not wait until Joan's gone." So then Joan came right on the show and played with us. Yeah. So wow, how about that? Yeah, this was at a reunion that I didn't produce. I was covering this for USA Today up in Northern California called Catfights and Caviar, produced by a couple friends of mine. Michael Levitt, actually Henry Winkler was also a producer on that. Fonzie produced these reunions, and I got to jump in a photo that John Forsythe had. John had dementia.
At that time, right? Yes, yeah.
But the costumer, the legendary costumer Nolan Miller, had befriended me, and he brought me over to meet John, and so I had no choice but to extend my hand and say hi. And John was wonderful that day. He was such a class act, and he pulled it together, even though he was suffering from dementia in his 90s at that time. And Dolly. Dolly, this was great. So when I was a kid, I dressed up as Dolly Parton in a Halloween parade. I think it was probably like 5th grade. And I brought that photo of me as Dolly to Dolly when she came in Home and Family, and she autographed it to Dolly #1, love Dolly #2. And I told her that, I had, I guess, her support of the LGBT community had helped me come out of the closet. And she said, your mama looked at that photo of you as me and didn't know you was gay. And I said, yeah, I guess that she had blinders on for a while. Dolly was a ton of fun.
She's amazing, isn't she?
Yeah.
Treasure.
She was great. I did bring her in Home and Family. I was the one that got her on. And then Dolly had such a good time that she invited the show to Dollywood for a whole week of shows there.
Wow,
which
that's
was
incredible. And of course, you mentioned Desperate Housewives earlier. Yeah.
Terry's not in that photo. This was on the final episode. I was the only reporter allowed on set for the final shooting. And by this time, I reported that Terry and these 3 lovely women, Eva, Felicity, and Marcia, were no longer speaking. There had been something that happened with Terry getting a special privilege, a perk that the ladies found out about, and they weren't happy about it, and that led to kind of an estrangement. But a short time later, Terry invited me over to her character's lawn where she was hiding out in between takes, and I also got a photo with Terry as well. I don't know if you have that photo, but
look at this one.
Oh, there's Kirsty. Yeah, this is after the Scientology scandal. We were friends again.
I tell you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Cindy Williams.
Yeah. Somebody has been looking at my Instagram page. I think like a lot of us, when we're lucky enough to meet a celebrity and that celebrity passes away, we're fortunate to be able to do a little tribute.
She was a sweetheart of a person, wasn't she? I met her a couple of times through a friend of mine, Dan Goggin, who created the whole Nonsense series on Broadway. And he introduced me to her, and she was just a beautiful person, funny, witty, warm. And, I know you met her, but you did meet Penny Marshall too, didn't you?
Yeah. not as nice. No, I actually flew. I was in Vegas interviewing Kim Cattrall from Sex and the City. The hotel that I was staying at invited me to stay as their guest for a couple extra days, but then an opportunity came Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams together for a skit that they were shooting for the TV Land Awards. And I couldn't pass up this opportunity. So I cut my vacation short. I flew to this interview, and it was taking place at a boutique, a little store on Robertson in Beverly Hills. And I was waiting for an interview with Cindy and Penny, and Cindy came over right away and did an interview with me, and Penny just was avoiding me. And the publicist finally said, Penny just doesn't feel like talking to you. And I said, I came all the way from Vegas. And I said, I'm going to go up to her myself. And I explained that I was a big fan and I was here for USA Today from Vegas. And Penny looked at me and said, I don't care, not my problem, and went back to smoking and shopping. I was really, really disgusted. But Cindy had heard that. She came over and said, I'm so sorry. I'll try to get her to talk to you, whatever you need. So yeah, for every Cindy Williams, there's a Penny Marshall in the world, or not.
Good times. Wow.
Oh my God. Cool. This was just a month ago. Yeah, look at this. This was at a Hollywood show that they do here in Burbank.
Oh yeah.
And I saw that they were going to be reuniting the cast of Good Times and What's Happening. And so I actually ended up getting them all together for one panel. And so on the left is Ernest Thomas, who played Raj on What's Happening. And then Dwayne there next to him played, who was his character? Oh, he played, I guess he played Dwayne on I'm forgetting his name. He played Dwayne on What's Happening. And then there was JJ, Jimmy Walker.
Hey. That's what he used to say, remember?
Yeah, but the two other co-stars from Good Times. And so I was able to get Ernest to do his Raj laugh, and then Dwayne did his hey, like you just said.
Yeah.
And I asked Jimmy to do his Dynamite, but he wouldn't do it. He said he doesn't do that anymore. He wouldn't
Ralph
do it.
Carter there.
And the whole audience then doing Dynamite instead, which was fun. Ralph Carter at the end. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And then we said, this is such a great shot, too. And I remember hearing when Ann B. Davis had passed in her home, which is such sad news. Another great shot there. Just a couple of little more quick ones. You mentioned the Dallas.
That's the South work, with all the Ewings, including the principal. So I will say that I have 3 Dallas chapters in my book. I have a chapter all about Larry Hagman. I was sent by the Enquirer to track down his liver donor. He was dead, but I found his family. And Larry Hagman writes in his book that because of my snooping, he has a photograph of his liver donor. He got to actually meet him. I also have a chapter on Victoria, principal, in my book, who I was close with and then not so much. And then there's also a chapter in there about Dak Rambo, who was on Dallas for a couple of years and passed away of AIDS. And that was the hardest chapter for me to write. And I'll leave it at that. People can read the chapter and discover for themselves why that was so difficult for me to confess.
Absolutely. When you look at, there's the Dallas, kid growing up in upstate New York and had this there's
Terry. There's Terry there. Yeah.
And Melissa Gilbert, which you mentioned earlier. Great shot. As a kid, you grew up in upstate New York, you grew up on television. You saw all these characters, all these shows, probably like me, singing the theme songs, can hum the theme songs back when you used to be able to do that, when they had theme songs and jingles.
What was your favorite, Jim? What was your favorite theme song?
Oh boy. It's tough because I always like the Dick Van Dyke Show. Dun, 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 dun. The Brady Bunch. We had Lloyd Schwartz on.
Wow.
I talked about the Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island and all the rest. And we had a great discussion about the underscoring, the music that goes under, for the viewers watching, the music you hear underneath the dialogue, or when they're transitioning from scene to scene to enhance the mood. And I used to love back then when they would take the theme that we heard at the beginning and the end, and they created versions of it that would be weaved into the show, but sometimes they would be fast, sometimes they would be slow, and sometimes with the Brady Bunch, do 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 do, and it would be like a very moving scene, maybe with Florence Henderson and
Right.
Cindy, or just how they would weave versions of the
Absolutely.
theme. So fantastic. You don't really see that much anymore of any
No,
of that,
yeah, I
but they
love
used
it.
to do it with
Yeah.
I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched, and
Yeah. I remember you
some of the
mentioned, yeah. Yeah, you
there's
mentioned Gilligan's
transitions
Island.
on Genie and Bewitched
Mhm.
when they would like if you look at Genie, I Dream of Genie, and they would transition like from the house to like Tony Nelson going to NASA, and they'd have that blurred fast, and they'd have that bongo. They
Right.
don't do that anymore when they're transitioning
Yes. Oh my God,
scenes.
I'm being
I
flooded
used
with
to
memories.
love that.
Yeah.
I used to
I
love
mean,
all.
I remember when Jeannie, would find out that Major Nelson didn't love her or something, and they would just kind of have her off by herself, and they would have a dun 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 dun.
Yes.
Same with Bewitched, something emotional would happen with Darren, and dun, 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 dun. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but I remember Gilligan's Island had like an original, like a blurb. There was something like do 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 do. That was when Gilligan was walking across the island and discovering some coconut. Yeah.
Yeah, they used to do that on the TV shows. Family was also very, very good at that too, because John Rubinstein wrote that fabulous theme. Do 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 do, and they would have various versions of that weaved in based on something dramatic happening or something going on,
Yeah.
and it just when it solidify and beautifully knit and
Yeah. Yeah.
weave everything together,
Mhm.
all part of what goes on behind the scenes to create some of your favorite
Yeah.
television shows and of all time. And even when you watch movies too, like we were just watching, we had Catherine Kramer on about 2 weeks ago, daughter of iconic film
Stanley.
director Stanley Kramer, goddaughter of Katharine Hepburn, and just talking about all the music that was used in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and
Mm.
just do 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 do, the glory of love,
Oh
just
yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that, just
Right.
really. And then
Yeah.
of course there's On Golden Pond, and that incredible theme, and just Katharine Hepburn and Henry Fonda, cool stuff when you look back at it all. But kid growing up in the Albany area, the capital region, does all of this, and entertainment journalist and author, producer of amazing reunions and TV shows and all the kinds of things. Do you ever pinch yourself and say, my God, I think I have, what you wanted came to be? And that's not
Yeah.
always what happens when people pack those bags and they move from Illinois or upstate New York or North Carolina or wherever, and they go to Hollywood and they get in there and do their thing. It's not something that always happens. Do you ever look in the mirror and say, holy cow, uh,
You know what?
this continues to be some ride?
I mean, absolutely. I think I mentioned my license plate on my car. My Jeep is bionic, and I was able to get photos with both Lee Majors and Lindsay Wagner seated on my bionic bumper. Linda Gray, in my book, she honors me by calling me an honorary Ewing, and the Brady Bunch have welcomed me as an honorary Brady. So yeah, all these fantasies of getting to be part of these TV families really did come true. And as a little bonus at the back of the book, I have a whole photo album of many of the photos that we've been looking at of these reunited casts that I've been lucky enough to meet. Many that you haven't seen with Partridge Family and Leave It to Beaver and Happy Days and One Day at a Time. So many of them, the Waltons that I got to group together and be with. So
Did you chat with Glenn Scarpelli? He's a great friend. Did you, from One Day at
Glenn,
a Time? Glenn is
yeah, Glenn.
terrific.
Glenn. I was backstage at the TV Land Awards, and they were being honored, and Glenn was there, and Glenn actually, for those, he came out. He spoke on stage about being gay, and I don't think he'd spoken publicly about that at all. He gave a beautiful speech, but very sadly never made it on air. And I was there specifically to do a reunion photo with, gosh, help me, Bonnie Franklin, Mackenzie Phillips,
Valerie Bertinelli.
Valerie Bertinelli, and
Pat Harrington, was he there?
Pat Harrington, the four of them.
Was Nanette Fabre also there? Played the mother.
She was not there. What I was doing was, and I showed these in the book as well, whenever I could, I would recreate classic TV guide cover images. And so I did it with the cast of Laverne and Shirley, with David Lander and Michael McKean and Penny and Cindy. I did it with the One Day at a Time foursome. I did it with Family Ties, all the Keatons, including Michael J. Fox, in the same positions they were. I arranged them exactly. And then also the Facts of Life cast with Mrs. Garrett and the four girls, all in the exact same position. And something happened with that. Cloris Leachman was also on hand. And Cloris, of course, came on later in the Facts of Life run to take over when Charlotte Rae left the cast. And I was trying to explain to Cloris that she couldn't be in the photo because we were recreating this image of Charlotte and the four girls. And Cloris just didn't get it. And I couldn't get her out of the photo. So ultimately, I told the photographer, I said, just take a picture with Cloris in it. I'll distract her, and then we'll get the photo that we really, really, really need. That was a weird shoot altogether. Kim Fields also did something very strange that I write about in the book during that photo shoot. So usually it's a joy,
cool
and it's pretty easy. But sometimes it's people want to position for the right spot, and obviously remember the Desperate Housewives Vanity Fair cover shoot and all that drama when they all wanted to be in a certain position and wear a certain color bathing suit. And it's interesting being behind the scenes of some of these photos.
So, in writing this book, how long did it take from when you had the germ of the idea to then completion? Is this something that took several years?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Over 10 years.
10 years. And did you keep journals? How did you go back and, be able to remember and get all this in?
I'm a hoarder, Jim. I saved everything. I saved every reporter notebook with every single detail in there. I think I had about 65 reporter notebooks just for my Enquirer years alone. I kept every tape recorded interview. I kept every clipping, whether it was a major story in LA Times, item that I reported in Entertainment Weekly, and of course all the photographs, and 200 of them appear in the book. So I made use of everything. So this was my living diary.
Was this also therapeutic and cathartic for you as well?
Absolutely. I refer to it as my mea culpa. I feel like the slate is clean. I was able to make amends with those that I wronged, many of them, writing these essays in the book. I think that this is sort of my little bow tie on my experience in Hollywood, at least this part of my life in Hollywood. And now I'm free to kind of move on and do something else.
What are you doing now? What are some of the things you're working on now?
Well, I'm working on. I'm still embracing my love and nostalgia, but in a different way, and partnering with some of these folks in some projects that can't talk about yet.
No, not yet.
Couple things that I know fans will really, really love once we're able to actually get it greenlit.
Well, you're welcome to come back at any time when you do some of these projects. And if you want to bring on some of those folks you're doing it with, we can promote and tout and share those stories with our viewers. Absolutely. This really an extraordinary conversation. And again,
this has been so much fun. I can't believe it's been almost 2 hours.
Could you imagine? I tell you, it went by in a New York minute. It went by, right?
I guess so. Yeah, my stomach is grumbling. I'm late for dinner.
Me too. Again, everybody commenting and everybody welcoming you. And
oh my gosh.
Thank you for being here. William, sounds like you had quite an interesting life so far. The book sounds quite interesting. Good luck with all you do. And she's in New York City. Merlin's in Canada. Very interesting hearing your antics and interviewing all those people. Thanks for being here. And we call this Levity Hall because I said the show has a lot of light, love, and levity. And during the pandemic, I slipped up once and said light levity. And when I said levity, the audience just went wild and said, we are now your levity squad. You're Mr. Levity. This is Levity Hall, and you're one of the Levity family members now, my friend.
Well, I'd love to hear that. And, whether you were entertained or shocked or appalled by the stories that I've shared, I do want to say to the readers that I did learn a lot from my mistakes. Like I said, every chapter ends with one of these lessons learned. There's a lot of taking responsibility, owning up to what I did, and just sort of asking for a second chance. So I hope people will come along on this journey with me and not judge a book by its cover. How perfect was that?
Very good. I love that.
Good end.
There's the website too, folks, whenyoustepUponAstar.com. And also, of course, because the book literally just came out. It's hot off the presses. And you can go to Barnes & Noble. You can go to Amazon. We're all, the books are sold. And definitely check it out. It's a real page turner, gang. It really is.
You. Yeah, Barnes & Noble hosted the launch event. So it's available, barnesandnoble.com. You can get it in hardcover, softcover, or on Kindle. On Amazon, and as well if you prefer to read your books through.
Is there an audiobook?
Not yet. I'm looking at how best to. I want to do a different spin on it, but that's certainly on my to-do list for sure. People have told me I have a game like you. You have a great voice. People have said I have a game show kind of a voice. I'd like to finally put this to use and tell my stories. Well, I'm still able to before I go completely hoarse.
When you step upon a star. There you go.
I like it. Well, if I lose my voice, I'll have you step in for me, Jim.
That's it, right?
Yes.
Thanks for all the time, William. Truly, this was a terrific, as I say, not interview, but conversations. We're sort of bringing back a lot of the guests say you're bringing back that lost, that Dick Cavett, Carson, Merv, Regis style of the lost art of conversation. And it was a
pleasure. Yeah,
a real pleasure chatting with you, my friend. You're welcome back anytime. And definitely, I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I absolutely have with you, William.
For sure. Well, after you read the book and some of your viewers have read, we can talk about some of the things that they want to ask me. I'll come up on trial. I'll be their witness and they can interrogate me for my crimes.
Maureen's in Arizona, one of our faithful lovelies. This has been great. Aww. Your shenanigans, I love that word.
I love shenanigans.
Have indeed made for an exciting life, and I am so happy you were here to share your adventures with us. Thank you,
Wow,
William.
I love hearing these things. This is
Sherry is. These are some of our faithful lovelies. Sherry says, "Thank you for being here, William. Your book sounds absolutely amazing. Good luck with all you do." Jane is watching in Sweden. Thanks, William, for being here. This was sure an interesting show, and thanks, Jim. The pleasure is all mine as well.
Sweden's one of my favorite places. Yes, your viewers are all so beautiful, and they're
good stuff. Absolutely, my friend. And spread the word about our show. If you know folks you think would like to pop on, love to have conversations with them here on the Jim Masters Show.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, the pets there have reminded me that mine are overdue for their walk, so I'm going to go take them out. Give them some
sparkling and they're
yeah, right, exactly. I mean, you may be too late. I may be cleaning up. Maybe step upon a pile of when you step upon a puddle.
William Keck is always cleaning up. He's always sweeping up that mess.
Cleaning up the messes. That's right.
You be well, William, and thanks for being with us. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Thank you. So much fun. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care now. William Keck here on the show. He's got to walk the dogs. And he's got to get something to eat. We thank him for joining us, and we thank you for joining us as well. Entertainment reporter, author, Hollywood's Tabloid Bad Boy. He worked for the National Enquirer, also People Magazine, USA Today, the Los Angeles Times, TV Guide magazine, did some writing with Soap Opera Digest. He was a senior editor and columnist with TV Guide, and also was a page with CBS and NBC, and he's worked on Home and Family on the Hallmark Channel, and he's worked with the Discovery Channel, Aaron Spelling Productions, and so many more production companies and shows and specials. There's the book again, When You Step Upon a Star, Cringeworthy Confessions. We told you he was going to confess of a tabloid bad boy, but we just really scratched the surface of what he is sharing, which again is all in the book. He shares so much more. But he shared quite a bit with us here on the show, and we appreciate that. And we thank you for being with us as well. If this was your first time here watching the Jim Masters Show live, this episode was done live and now is archived on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. We can see all the episodes, saved hundreds of them with some of our favorite celebrity friends and guests. Be sure and give this episode a thumbs up like. There is a like thumbs up icon like a thumb. Click like. Share this episode on your social media. Spread the word about the Jim Masters Show series. Leave a comment in the comments section. Interact with us. What are some of the favorite shows and celebrities that you've enjoyed? And subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. For all of us, we thank you very much for being with us here on the Jim Masters Show Live. I'm your host, Jim Masters, thanking you for your time this time. Till next time, come see us again. We'll be right here in Levity Hall at JMS waiting for you on the Jim Masters Show Live. A lot of crazy stuff going on in our world, a lot of nutty things happening in our world. This is the antithesis. Come have a good time. Get a cup of coffee, tea, glass of wine, H2O, whatever your beverage of choice, and come see us. Relax, unwind, and enjoy these amazing conversations we have with our celebrity friends and guests who stop by JMS. Hopefully this lightens the load for you. Hopefully you have a laugh or two. You learn something. You're entertained, informed, educated, and inspired by these great conversations. Sometimes we go real deep. Sometimes we're just scratching the surface. And sometimes it's a little of all of the above. Whatever reason why you're here, we thank you for watching, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, supporting the Jim Masters Show Live series. It means the world to us that you are here. And again, we say, Godspeed and rest in peace to some recent celebrities that have passed at the time of this show. The incomparable, America's incredible fitness guru, television personality and author, Richard Simmons. Of course, Shannon Doherty, the wonderful actress from Charmed and Beverly Hills 90210 and much more. Dr. Ruth Restheimer, Dr. Ruth, sex therapist, author, and professor, and so much more, radio show host, television personality, had passed. Shelley Duvall, extraordinary actress. She was in The Shining with Jack Nicholson, had passed recently as well. And it's been some iconic figures that have passed just in the last few days of this show. So prayers to all their family and loved ones. And we say thank you to you for being here with us. A very special guest, again, William Keck, joining us from Los Angeles, from Hollywood. Check out the book and come see us and check us out again as well. We would love to see you with us. For all of us, Jim Masters, thanking you for your time this time. Till next time on the Jim Masters Show. Be well, take care, give us a like, because we love you, and cheers.